The AgTech Thursdays series organized by ILC is a series of innovative webinars that looks at the interesting section of technology and agriculture in order to improve the farm-based livelihoods across India. And the series majorly aims at bridging the knowledge to action gap in this direction. And we are trying to address it looking at the latest trends and progress in AgTech and its boost for agribusinesses. And the series also highlight various avenues for interventions to take place through success stories of diverse AgTech players and enablers in the value chain at various levels to improve the farm-based livelihoods and its outcomes, and also help in creating jobs in this process. So the first session that happened on 20th, we looked at the AgTech landscape and the role it plays in the livelihoods in India, keeping the farmer at the heart and understanding the gaps and requirements of the community. We also understood the classification of AgTech startup interventions and the corresponding challenges in terms of funding, partnerships, and access to data for scale up. Today, we look at 4 unique AgTech interventions, their action on ground, and the impact on farmers and livelihoods. With us, we have Mr. Suman, Senior Manager at Dr. Reddy's Foundation. He will be the moderator for the session, and he will also be introducing our panel. Over to you, Suman.
Thank you, Bhagyashree. Thank you so much. First of all, thanks for ILC to give me this opportunity to moderate this session. I'm feeling privileged to moderate a panel in which 4 very well-known organizations, well-known startups, which are scale up and prove their business model. So I'm really feeling privileged about it. So welcome to all the 4 panel members. Mr. Arjun, founder and CEO of Jai Kisan, and Mr. Shyam from DeHaat, and Mr. Kunal Prasad, founder and CEO of Crop In Technologies, and Mr. Ranjit Mukundan, co-founder and CEO of Stella Apps. So to give a brief of am I audible? Hello.
Yeah, it's clear, Suman, you can go ahead.
Yeah, we are able to hear you.
Okay, so this is about this entire 4 panel speakers. Here we are. I don't know. Bhagyashree, can you just introduce about all the 4 panel speakers? Because somehow I'm feeling a lot of disturbance at the background. I don't know, because of some technical reason or some signal issue. If you can just introduce all the 4 panelists, that would be helpful.
Sure. So the first panelist for today is Mr. Kunal Prasad. He's the co-founder and CEO of Crop In Technologies. He has over 11 years of experience in the technical and management arena, and a lot of work experience in sales and business development, project management, and product and customer experience. The second panelist that we have is Mr. Shyam Sundar Singh. Shyam is the co-founder and executive director of DeHaat. He holds a BTech in chemical engineering from IIT Kharagpur and a PGDM from IIM Ahmedabad. Before his stint at DeHaat, he's also worked with TCS, Reliance, and John Deere. Our third speaker is Mr. Ranjit Mukundan. Ranjit is a co-founder and CEO of Stellap Technologies. He's a telecom and software engineer who has led a team of 250 as a part of Wipro Telecom application practice and has over 17 years of industry experience. Our last speaker today is Mr. Arjun Ahluwalia. Arjun is the founder and CEO of Jai Kisan. He graduated from Texas A&M with BBA and has worked with multiple large corporations and consulting in the USA before starting Jai Kisan in India. And he brings back experience in venture capital investment, portfolio, and deal sourcing and sales. Over to you, Suman.
Yes. Thanks, Bhagyashree. So now let me not take more time in terms of giving a background, but a small brief about this entire panel is all about how their work, the startups work are actually revolutionizing the entire agriculture through their technical interventions, also about their idea and business model as well as the impact. So this is what we are going to focus on. And we will complete all the 4 panel speakers presentations first, and then followed by the question and answers. So I request the participants to share their questions in the chat so that I can take a note of it, and then we can ask the panelists after the presentations are over. So over to you, Mr. Kunal.
Thanks, Suman. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Kunal. Just a small correction. I'm the founder and the chief operating officer at Cropin Technology. So quick brief about Cropin. We are a full stack agriculture digital solution provider. We have been in the industry for the last 10 years right now. And in the last 10 years, we have built in digital solutions which are helping ecosystems around agriculture, which are in the farming side, in the seed businesses, on the financial institutions around lending or insurance, as well as a lot of developmental sector work, where NGOs, FPOs, government development aid-funded organizations are trying to help organizations and farmers all together to make them much more productive, resilient to unforeseen climate changes, as well as help them to increase their income opportunities from agriculture by better linkages to finance inputs and market. So we operate across the ecosystem, and until date we have worked in almost 52 countries, impacting lives of close to 2.1 million farmers across the ecosystem. How can I change the slide? Can we go to the next one?
Yeah, Kunal, I have given you the remote control access. I think you'll be able to change the slide from your end.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, as I mentioned, so we are a full stack agri-tech company, and when we talk about full stack, we are across the value chain. We have products which helps businesses. Can you go one slide back, please? We help businesses which are into the farming side, in terms of helping the farmers to help them select their crops, to helping them basically digitize the land records, the geotagging of the particular plot, the area survey of the plot, and helping give specific advisories to the farmers from the time of sowing till the time of harvesting, which includes your package of practices, your input recommendations, your climate smart advisories, your predictive disease forecasting and advisory to that single farmer, and then at the time of harvesting, ensuring that the ecosystem knows about that, what is the farmer group, and how much is the output that is going to come from these farmers. So we help also the forward linking players to know much in advance of what is going to come from either this farmer or the farmer collective. After that, we have also a platform which basically uses machine learning and AI in agriculture, which is our Smart Risk platform. Here, the solution is helping institutions to remotely manage their farm operations. So primarily banks, insurance companies, or even contract farming companies, or even a developmental organization would be interested to know that what is happening in the farm without relying on the field team which is there on the ground, which means through satellites, they would like to monitor the crop, what crop the farmer is growing, what is the health of that particular crop, what is the stress of that particular crop, and what is the estimated yield of that particular crop. So in all of these parameters, we have modules using AI where we build crop signatures and help these organizations to assess the health of the farms and then take proactive decisions at the business level plus also help the farmer get the right set of advisory based on that. The third is eventually once you have done the good work on the production side, the supply chain is a very critical element where we have a complete supply chain come warehousing and traceability solution, which helps you as an organization to collectivize it. Either you have your collection centers or you have your processing centers to help you manage those centers well, inventory management, collection, payment to farmers, storage, and then supply to the end customer, where the end customer looking at a small QR code can exactly know that where the produce was grown, how it was grown, and get the end-to-end traceability. We also have a sales solution. So in case if you're selling your inputs, your seeds, fertilizers, chemicals also to the farmers and the farmer groups and recording all of those things on an accounting module, then this solution helps you in terms of organizing that. We have also partners in this particular aspect which are selling their inputs through our channels. And lastly, we have seen that now with the mobile penetration, there is a lot of farmers now having internet access as well as smartphones. So we have launched a farmer application through which you as an organization can actually reach out to your farmers, help them to know the weather conditions at their location, which is also a very hyper local weather data that we provide on our farmer application. You can send them recommendation on pest and disease. You can also give them packaging practices. And being a two-way communication channel, you can also hear back from your farmers that what is the farmer's problem. If they have or incidents of pests and diseases, they can report it to you so they can suggest that particular farmer. And if the farmer is interested in certain inputs or loans, those information can also reach out to you. So this is basically to help you engage very closely with a set of farmers that you're engaging with. Can you go next? Yeah. So in our value chain approach, what we have seen that the first step for any organization when you get into the digital journey is to first digitize your farmer and your farm assets. You know exactly thousands of farmers, how many acres, how many plots, what is the status of those farms, what they were growing earlier, and what is the potential for them to grow, what are the crops that's happening in those areas. So digitization becomes a fundamental aspect on which the entire platform resides. And it's also a value creation for all of the ecosystem, because then they can easily come and interact on that particular platform. So that's the first thing that we suggest and help organizations implement. As you digitize your farmers, and you know that if you have say 10 crops which your farmers are growing, the advisory starts getting triggered once you have registered your farmers and the crop on the platform. And it all happens depending on the specific crop and the variety that particular farmer is growing. So this becomes a combined solution for you to engage with your farmers much more real time and advise and get the information back from the farmer. Once the digitization platform is ready, the asset that you create is to engage the ecosystem around that. Then when you go and talk to businesses which are supplying inputs or finance or markets, they have sufficient information which they could put in their risk modeling or business model to help them come and engage with a set of farmers that they have. So we have partners which have like sold inputs through the digital platform to the farmers or farmer collectives. We also work with finance companies which are lending, looking at the credit worthiness of the farmers, which is again coming from the digital platform, as well as we have access to markets. In fact, like we are working with the government of Punjab in helping these farmers to reach out to retailers and distributors in that market. So we have this suggestion that if you are an organization getting into the digital journey, start off with the first part of digitization and advisory, and then move to the next levels in the organization. Next, please. This is the ecosystem approach where you as an organization would be having a certain field interface. Either you call them VRPs, LRPs, extension officers, agronomists, field staff. These are the representatives which work with the farmer, and these are the flag bearers of the organization, which really helps you in terms of digitizing and providing the services to the set of farmers on the group. As a long-term approach, the agripreneurs or these PBAs can actually be self-empowered to take decisions on their own, then and then help you in terms of creating value at the bottom with the farmers that they engage with. We also have an ecosystem approach that once these agropreneurs gets into the platform, it can then be connected to other ecosystem players where if they start selling inputs or get access to markets and they provide those services, then actually there's a commission that can come from the value chain, and that commission that comes from the value chain can actually help you support the entire program. So this is an approach which is being done by a lot of institutions, mostly on the developmental side, and we are supporting completely those programs through our digital solution. Next, please. This is just a quick snippet about the farm management solution. So it's basically a VBAs carrying a mobile application. This is all available in offline mode. You have multiple multilingual options. So if you're talking in your local languages, it can also configure in that particular manner. The SMS, the farmer can get information on SMS, IVRS, or directly on the farmer application, which is linked to your field extension officer, and then linked to the organization in that respect. We also help you in terms of driving sustainable practices. So if you are fair trade, you are global gap, or you're having any certification and a vision to reach to international markets with traceability, the platform that we offer has functionalities to help you adopt all of these principles on the digital tool. Next. The benefit for the farmer is that these days, because climate is a big problem, we are helping farmers get predictive advisories, which are more machine learned and AI-based advisories. So looking at the weather condition of that particular farmer, the geolocation of that particular plot, and the forthcoming weather condition, we have a ML model through which we are proactively sending the farmer these messages. And these are early warning messages that is going to the farmer. So it helps you in terms of planning your sowing windows, in terms of taking right irrigation decisions, in terms of input usage when you're spraying or you're applying fertilizers. Looking at the weather condition and the advice, we actually help you to either stop it or do it depending on that, which is actually a good saving for the farmer. And pest and disease, which actually impacts 20 to 30% of the crop in terms of the total output that is coming, we help you in terms of reducing that through predictive advisories. And a lot of that has been developed. This module has been developed with the partnership with World Bank, a climate smart project that they did since 2017 till 2020. And this is now a ready-made product for any institution or partner to adopt. Next. We can go next. This is one of the module looks and feels of that. How do we basically help them do that? This is the farmer application I talked about. It helps you in terms of engaging with your farmers. So it has different interfaces. It is also a B2B2C application. So it is not directly engaging. It is not directly Cropin coming and working with the farmer, but it is through an enterprise that we engage, and you as an enterprise can engage the way that you want with your set of farmers. So you can give them videos, you can give them training materials, you can give them knowledge, they can also see satellite data if that is enabled for your program, and everything information is available to the set of farmers. Next, please. This is the market linkage platform. So while we saw that the digital platform really helps in terms of increasing productivity, the bigger value comes for the farmer when you actually have them connect to markets, mostly for fresh and fruits and vegetable, where the supply chain is quite fragmented and losses happens post harvest. We have built in this entire platform where predictive harvest schedules are available to the buyers, where they can come and plan the procurement much in advance. So this is helping reduce the time between harvest and sales or consumption at the end customer level, so that the best quality could be delivered to the customer in the minimum possible time, and less storage requirement at the farmer level. Next. This is the traceability module. So we can also go next, where once you actually have a produce which is traceable, you can actually, we have done this project with a lot of exporters from India, spices, fresh fruits and vegetables, and also with the government. We're looking at this QR code. You can scan, any customer can scan it in a shelf on a packet of whatever produce you have, and then you can know the entire end-to-end journey on that particular produce. We can go next. Next, please. I think I talked about it. We can go next. So we also help in terms of linkages of different services, which was the last slide, where different institution, if you're working on the farmer on the developmental side, we help you to connect it to financial institutions, also to input side, also the market side. So it helps you. So once you have a digital platform and data available there, it then helps you in terms of organizing your focus into other aspects and creating much more incremental value for your farmer. We have presence, as I said, so we started in 2010, and we till 2015 we built the right product for India. And in India we have close to 150 plus partners. We started going outside, and the platform really started creating a lot of value. And now, glad to share that we are now almost in 52 countries, and we have the leading organizations in the world using our platform for all the services that we talked about on. And climate change is a big issue, and that's one of the solutions that we can really recommend partners to explore from our platform. Next. I will leave this case studies for future, so we can just maybe quickly go run through that. So I was just sharing some of the case studies around our project with Jivika. This is the World Bank project on climate change, which was done in Bihar and MP, and this was a fantastic response. In 3 years period, we could actually improve the productivity of the farmers altogether by 32% and reduce the losses by around 9%. So that was almost a 42% incremental value that we created from digital solutions. Next. Can we go next, please? Yeah. So this is the Punjab government partnership that we have in terms of traceability. So when a farmer is buying a seed, then they are quite confused whether the seed that they're buying is the real seed or spurious seeds. So we are actually helping the government to have this QR code labeled, which are non-tamperable and non-replicable ones. So the farmer which gets the product actually knows that this is the right product that they are consuming. Next. This is also one of the very interesting projects that we have partnered with Tata Cine, Tata Trust organization, which is in Jharkhand, and we are working with close to 30,000 farmers in their in different parts of the state. And these 30,000 farmers are small and marginal farmers with an aspiration to earn close to 1 lakh rupees from agriculture and allied activities. We are very happy to share that this project is going very fine, and the farmers have really adopting a lot of advice that is going to them. This is the first year of the program, and we look forward to bringing similar programs in many other parts of the country. Next. Okay, this is our vision as well. So while we are at 2.1 million farmers, we are very happy to partner, and that's why we have built this platform. We are very happy. Any of you interested to partner and see the digital solution, please ping out to us, and we'll be happy to support you. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much, CSR Box.
Thanks, Kunal. Thanks for the detailed presentation. And I mean, as Cropin is one of the first generation ag startups in the country, and we are happy to see that the kind of scale up you have had and the kind of vision you have to help Indian farmers. So of course, you have a kind of a broad range of products and solutions which are helping the institutions or business institutions as well as the farmers at large. So we have a lot of questions about your interventions from the participants. I will ask these questions as soon as all the panel speakers complete the presentation. Now, next we'll go to Mr. Shyam. So over to you, Shyam.
Great. Thank you, Suman, and thanks everyone. Thanks organization for this session. We are very delighted to present here and to explain you about the offerings of DeHaat. So good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, actually. Do I have the remote control here? No. Can you go to the next slide?
Yes, 1 second. I'll give you the control.
All right. Thank you. So. Yes. So in Agri, and since many of us have the information about how things are there in Agri, right? We understand major pain points of farmers. At least we know that, farmers' income in India is not great. the productivity is lower than the global standards. We all heard about the approach, about the stories about farmer suicides and everything, right? So we know bits and pieces of what's happening, right? But many of us often do not realize that what is the common thread behind all those things, right? And our hypothesis had been that the access for small farmers to avail all these, to avail their basic requirements for agriculture is the common problem for all of them, right? So because access to say quality input is not there, so the input costs are higher. Around 30% of input in the market is spurious quality. Selling is difficult. There are multiple layers and multiple channels of multiple layers of middlemen involved, right? Similarly, quality information is not available. So there are multiple challenges on the input front. At the other end of it, sorry for this, right? I'm controlling that, Makshi, thank you. So at the other end, the agri businesses who are in this market, they also do not have the proper access to farmers, right? And since they don't have proper access, there are multiple challenges that they do face, right? So post-harvest losses of the crop, up to like 30 to 40%. They do not have the visibility of what's happening to their brands up to the after the distributor level. There are so many financial institutions, but still less than like 12 to 15% farmers actually have access to formal sources of credit or of insurance, right? So we are trying to solve problems at two ends. One, at farmers' end, by providing them one single platform to avail all of their agricultural requirements, and at the same time providing a bridge between agribusinesses and farmers so that a better customization can happen for all of the offerings that these agribusinesses have, right? So that is the basic premise on which this presentation will be based on. Coming to what we do. So like in agri inputs, there are more than 3,000 SKUs of input products that are currently listed on our platform. So at one go, farmers who avail our platform, they have access to almost all major the products of all major suppliers of input products in India, right? And not just the products, but farmers also receive personalized recommendation along with dosage requirements and best practices about the product. So it's not just the products that they get, right? That results in up to 10 to 15% savings in their direct input costs. Then throughout their cultivation cycle, they do receive weekly IVR calls. At any time, they can call on our toll-free number. They have an application on which they can post their queries, or to handhold them throughout their cultivation cycle for any of their requirements, right? And towards the same, now we are also trying to provide the GIS-based advisory, plot-based advisory, so trying to get deeper into providing more curated and personalized advisory to farmers. On top of that, with the same, we are also adding more value-added services to farmers like credit and insurance. And this results in up to 20% increment in their farm productivity. Then last but not the least, then once they harvest their produce, then we provide the market linkage to them from their directly to institutional buyers. And we do provide payment within 2 days, fair weighing terms, fair payment terms, everything, which results in farmers getting a proper return from their agriculture, right? So overall, this approach of providing a complete solution to farmers at the grassroots level results in up to 50% year-on-year increment in their agricultural income, right? Now, this model itself, it's a physical cum digital model where we are creating an ecosystem around farmers community using, using Android app, using call centers, and using our DeHaat centers. So DeHaat centers are basically a franchisee-host micro entrepreneur based model, where one micro entrepreneur typically serves 3 to 5 kilometer radius of farmers up to like 500 to 800 farmers for last mile delivery of products and services. And with this physical and digital infrastructure that we have created over the past 8 years, farmers get all their benefits under one roof with agriculture, like agri inputs, advisory, linkage, small implements, credit and insurance, now cattle feed. So it's completely a full stack platform, a technology-led full stack platform for farmers, right? So that's very briefly about how we operate. Okay, just going to what we have done so far. So currently, more than 3,20,000 farmers are on the platform. Roughly, most of them are small and marginal, medium farmers. So up to like 7 lakh acres of land under management by us, right? 900 they have micro entrepreneurs on the platform, and what we have seen is that during these COVID times, more and more micro entrepreneurs, roughly like 100, 150 micro entrepreneurs are getting onboarded digitally every month. So this approach of combining a physical and digital ecosystem had helped us in reaching out to farmers in much better way during these times, right? Daily, we are handling more than 400 tons of agri produce, and we are also handling 4,000 agri input orders every day now, right? So more than around 4 lakh minutes minutes per month have been spent on advisory by farmers. So what it tells you is that how this model of one-stop platform is getting validated by the community as we are growing, and every year now we are growing at 4x with respect to all these parameters. So not just the revenue that we are generating, but in terms of farmers network, in terms of number of micro entrepreneurs we have, in terms of the amount of produce that we are handling, we are growing on all those parameters in that respect. It's a fully technology enabled model. So to farmers, we have an app which is a very feature rich app. Some of the interesting features that we have is something called Farm Book, where farmers talk within their community, as well as they also get moderated and curated content from us regarding any of the agri experience that they want to share or the issues that they are having. They can request for soil testing through the app and get soil testing report done. And the same soil testing report gets digitized and advisory is sent accordingly to that, right? And of course, they can raise query, they can send images of their, if they have any crop infested, right? So they can send images of that, and that gets resolved on the platform. So the app does all those things, but the same features are also available to those farmers who are basic phone farmers, right? So those farmers can call on our call center. They receive weekly IVR calls. They receive direct personal calls from the call center team, right? For all of these things, then definitely farmers can also go to the DeHaat center and again fulfill all of their requirements at the same center, right? So what it does is that in this model, farmers have multiple options to interact with us, to create touch point with us, right? At the other end, DeHaat micro entrepreneurs are technically enabled. So all these centers are digitally capable enough to transact with farmers, to record a transaction, to capture a transaction, and to perform at their best capability, right? At the back end, now we have a completely robust backend system where multiple technologies are in use, so that all of this will be from the same kind of data system, right? So farmers, when they get onboarded, we record their complete digital profile. So farmers get a digital profile on which their land holding pattern, their cropping pattern, their past transactions, their demographic pattern, their call history, with everything is at one place, so that the person who is giving advice to farmers can get proper intelligence on how best to advise farmers, right? So the inputs that farmers get are also curated to what is their exact requirement at the plot level, right? So all these things have happened because of this robust database system that we have at the back end, right? So this is what has created a set of farmers who have been us for last 4 years, 5 years, 7 years, 8 years. Now all have been happy farmers, right? All have been farmers who are very satisfied with what we have done. So ultimately, what what the point that I was trying to make is that at DeHaat, we are a farmer-focused organization, and everything that we have done, what we are doing, is keeping in the mind that okay, how ultimately we can create an ecosystem where farmers, so for farmers, that would become the first line of first place for where they can go to fulfill any of their agriculture requirements. Okay, so that's it from my side. We'll be happy to take questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Shyam. Thanks for a very detailed presentation. In fact, DeHaat has been the one of the well-known marketplace platform, at least in Bihar where we work, and in the area where we work, a couple of farmers whom I directly interacted have been directly associated with the DeHaat centers, and they were talking very high about the kind of advisory service you provide and how is it different from an input dealer-related advisory services. So, and it's also a good initiative, or great to see that you extend the market linkages also as a service, which is also a great value addition to the farmers. We have a couple of questions for you, so we will take it once the panel speakers complete the presentation. So now next, Mr. Ranjit, if you can take over and then present.
Yeah, thank you, Suman. Thank you, Bhagyashree, for having me here, and thank you, Kunal and Shyam, for setting that context. Great to see the kind of impact that you guys are making. So I hope to sort of cover a similar landscape, but to a different crop, which is milk, and then I'll take it on from there. So I hope, Bhagyashree, I have the remote control from you.
Yes. You can start, Ranjit.
Okay, let me see if I can flip the sides. Yes. Okay. Just one sec, guys. I'll just get to the right slide and then. Yeah. Let me put it in. Yeah, I hope it's clearly visible now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So just to give you a landscape of how dairy looks like, right? So a lot of you know, but many of you would be coming from the other crop world, the fruits and vegetables and other crop, not so much so from the dairy world. So I thought I'll just give you a feel for the landscape. There are about 76 to 80 million dairy farming households. Majority of them are women, out of which a significant majority are smallholder farmers who are working on extremely marginal land holdings. And they contribute about 7.6% of our GDP if you take the milk output value and the animal value. And even the bovine population, which is cows and buffaloes, is quite big. So it's a single SKU product, but quite massive at that. So this is sort of to give you a feel for what a dairy landscape sort of looks like, right? Yeah, there's a little bit of lag when I see the switches. So, and in terms of sheer tonnage, in this case it's liters because it's liquid. About 42% of these of the milk that is produced, about of which of the total 572 million liters are retained by the producers. 33% of that remains in the unorganized sector, sold to the local sweet shops, the local tudiyas, and about 25% is what finally gets into the organized sector. In terms of sheer volume, the organized sector is about 143 million liters, and this sector, the organized sector, is growing at 20% year on year. About 8% is the total growth rate of the entire segment. And to give you a comparison, in fruits and vegetables, in fruits and vegetables market, only about 5% is organized, about 95% is unorganized. Thanks to some pioneering work done by the likes of Amul and Mother Dairy and all of them in India, a significantly higher percentage of milk is in the organized sector. It's about 25%. And that's taken about 50, 60 years to get to this speed. So it's a little more evolved sector from the point of view of the extent of organized sector that it touches vis-a-vis the other sectors. So and what can it do for smallholder farmers, right? So we are in a in India Livelihood Collective session. So from a what exactly does it mean? So if you take a typical farmer, majority of the farmers are women in the dairy sector. They're the ones who finally milk the animal. They earn less than 36 rupees per day. They do not have any access to farm and lending system because the banks and the rest of the financial institutes are not very keen on lending to this sector the way they would lend to the other sectors because of the inherent risks that are involved, lack of data, lack of CB scores and all that. No access to good high-end input services, which is pretty true of other crops, but more so in the case of animals, and more so in the case of dairy, and 2 to 3 animals and very poor yield, right? So this is sort of how a typical smallholder farmer landscape looks like. And it's quite prevalent. As I said, there are 50 million such people, and significantly and making up for a significant percentage of our GDP. So it's a problem at big scale. So how do we sort of solve the problem? So what we have tried to do is try to use a supply chain digitization approach for the dairy, starting from the farm to the consumer, right? Digitize the farm extension services, digitize supply chain, and digitize various components that enable all of them to come in, and ML algorithms and all of that. But how do you ensure that it also enables all the ecosystem folks who are into cattle nutrition, cattle pharmaceuticals, financial institutions and insurance companies to also participate and leverage this platform, and so that we can together try to solve this problem. That's sort of the approach that we have sort of taken. How does the tech stack looks like? I'm sort of peeling the onion here a little bit and giving you some under the hood details. So on the farm side, our tech stack includes things like an animal wearable. You can imagine this to be like a Fitbit for the cows. It helps you optimize the cow, the breeding, animal nutrition, enables people to focus on preventive healthcare rather than sickness management and general record keeping, right? And also enables the participating players in the ecosystem like the insurance companies, the banks, to get a real-time view of how the animals are maintained. Is there any other inherent risk involved? Because for a cattle owner, for a dairy farmer, the cattle is the movable, performing, traceable asset, right? So they get a feel for this asset performance on a real-time basis using this. And more importantly, for the farmer, this sort of helps him improve the farm economics and the P&L at a cow or a cattle level, right? And then we have a herd management platform that sort of helps you Uberize the local village dairy intervention folks onto our platform. So this could be the local artificial insemination technicians, nutrition personnel. It could be folks who are from any other form of farm intervention technicians who are focused on dairying, paravets, vets, and all of these personnel gets Uberized so that our platform can be used free of cost by these personnel to make their intervention more precise. And then, of course, ensure that they're able to cover more farmers and do more data-led intervention rather than the general, old-fashioned analog way of intervening at these farms for general livestock management. And then we also have components at the collection center that helps you grade and price the milk, that helps you sort of convert the milk into currency. At the end of the day, farmers care for, how do you convert this into currency, right? So the grade to price solution, where as a function of the milk quality, we enable certain payments that needs to go out to the farmers in real time and in a manner that it doesn't have to pass through the middleman, which is quite critical, because if the money passes through the middleman, then you have all the other issues coming in, such as the money lending folks, turning the wheels, and then it becomes a big problem for the farmers, right? And then the reception dock and the chilling center is a component where the dairy processors can benefit by using our technology components for better quality, ensuring zero pilferage, ensuring that there is no anomalies in the supply chain with respect to quantity and quality, and then ensure that they're able to provide premium market linkages to consumers like you and I who live in the cities, right? So if we are willing to pay a higher amount of money for an antibiotic-free, a pesticide-free milk, or milk that is rich in omega-3 fatty acids, then the dairy processors needs to be enabled, to supply this kind of milk to a more discerning, consumer, right? So as you would have seen, we have sort of taken a end-to-end supply chain approach, not focused on just the pre-harvest portion or the post-harvest portion, but sort of taken an end-to-end approach, and then use the hardware hooks to enable data services that can further help the farmers improve productivity, quality, and become part of the traceability chain as well, right? And this is a quick summary of what does it mean to the dairy farmer and the dairy processor. As I said, for the dairy processor, it helps optimize the supply chain, right? Collect more amount of good milk from fewer number of farmers. Help ensure that you're able to optimize the logistics. Help them ensure that they're able to create premium market linkages, whether it's a discerning consumer who's willing to pay extra for that better produce, right? And then all of this percolate down to advantages for the farmers and all the other ecosystem players, including the technology providers like ourselves, because farmers finally care for how much money can they make, how much can their profitability improve, and how quickly can they get the money, right? Because they will have requirements. They do have working capital requirements. Doing all this, what are the possibilities, right? If you do all of these based on some work that you've done on the field, we know that the smallholder farmer, a typical Gita kind of a person out there, right? The income levels can go up from 36 rupees to 4,800 rupees, per day. This just doesn't happen by improving the per capita yield of the animal. This also warrants that the herd size also improves, right? So just with 2 to 3 animals, there's only so much you can do. But then even if you have just less than half an acre of land, if you have access to capital, if you have access to all the services, input services, then rest assured, any farmer who's more amenable, who has that dairypreneur nerve in him, right, or in her, can actually climb up this ladder and go to the next level. All this happens because, one, it helps improve the productivity levels. It helps ensure premium market linkages by ensuring that consumers are willing to pay more for a premium product in the market. And are we trying to solve this at a niche level, or can we solve it at scale, right? The idea is that we can solve it at scale. We have digitized about 10 million liters of milk per day in terms of milk flow on our platform, which corresponds to about over $1.6 billion annualized basis worth of trade that we enable. We touch about close to 3 million farmers today, and quite widespread. So it's something that we can scale, but we need a lot more stronger partnerships in place. It's a stronger ecosystem play, and the dairy farmer is just not touching just dairy, he's also touching other fruits and vegetables, because he would be having other agri produce, which is more seasonal, whereas milk happens to be a 365-day side of a crop. And the idea is, how do we take this up in a collaborative manner? Folks across various segments, be it cattle nutrition, cattle pharmaceuticals, cattle healthcare, financial providers, premium market linkage providers. If we can come together, we can further speed it up. That's about what I had. I will hand over and then answer any questions as we go forward. Over to you, Sumant, for the next speaker.
So thank you, Ranjit. Thank you for a very detailed presentation, and thanks for taking us through the entire model and how you are trying to approach the problem or a ecosystem solution. So now let's see how Jai Kisan is helping the farmers through this product. And as of now, we have seen that Cropin has tried to have a different solution for each and every set of the agriculture value chain. And DeHaat is trying to see how they can directly improve the last mile delivery. Now we have seen Ranjit's presentation on a specific niche area of dairy. Now we will see Jai Kisan, how they are improving the access to credit part to the farmers through their product. So over to you, Arjun.
Great, thank you so much, Suman and Bhagyashree, for setting this up. Also sincere thanks to ILC, MSC, and CSR Box for taking the effort to be able to curate such a customized program. And Ranjit, thank you for setting the context here and also diversifying the topic more towards dairy, and Shyam and Kunal for setting the initial context here. Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm Arjun Ahluwalia, the founder and CEO of Jai Kisan. We're a financial technology platform financing and other financial services from lenders and financial institutions to borrowers and customers across rural India. Given that about 70% of rural Indians interact on a daily basis with either the agri, dairy, or poultry value chain, this makes it an extremely key market for us to provide financial services towards, and then be able to give other products like savings, insurance, etc. So to just kind of set up some context here, right? And Ranjit, I'm just going to hop onto the milk caravan here since you set the context, right? I would love to kind of ask you all a rhetorical question. We all largely, most of us live in cities, okay? We have decent buying power as well, and we have liquidity, unlike many people in rural India. Let me ask you a very simple question. When do you pay for your milk to your milkman, right? And a large part of India pays cash to their milkman at the end of the month, right? And if God forbid, the milkman ends up asking for cash during the month, right? He or she is simply told that we'll find another merchant if they do not wait till the end of the month. Now that shows how in India, credit is not a service. It's an expectation. And hence, when it can be the milkman, it can be a newspaper wala, it can be the kirana store guy, right? Even colleagues of mine, for example, if they go downstairs and possibly buy a Coca-Cola or a bottle of water from a kirana store, they'll say, khate mein dal do, right? Yeah, put it on my tab, and I will come and clear it out in a week's time or in a month's time, etc., etc. And hence, the value chain player in India, to enable their own sales, have to end up, or are rather forced to provide some sort of credit. And hence, the thesis that farmers do not have access to credit is not fully right, because at the end of the day, farmers do buy inputs on credit as well, which is provided by their retailers, right? And they end up also taking credit, maybe from their buyer partner or the artiya that they end up eventually selling to. Unfortunately, this credit is very, very mispriced, right? And that is where farmers in India do not have access to formal / rightly priced credit. And the reason for this is they are fundamentally not digitized, right? Their transactions are not digitized. Neither are their land records, nor are any of their buying patterns in terms of input and selling patterns in terms of output either. And that is where here at Jai Kisan, we believe in using credit as a hook to be able to digitally and financially onboard the rural customer, primarily the farmer, helping them build a digital footprint online, using which we can give them access to other credit products as well, maybe of larger ticket sizes, and then other financial products like insurance, savings, etc. So that is the goal here at Jai Kisan we kind of go out with. In addition to that, we had a philosophical goal internally here when my co-founder and myself quit our jobs and started Jai Kisan in a way. And that was that we wanted to ensure that if a lender underwrites risk of a particular customer or a borrower, let's say at 12%, right? We are able to deliver that financing within 400 basis points to the end customer, whoever that may be. Unlike today, where financial institutions or financial intermediaries like MFIs and NBFCs and the like borrow at X and end up lending at a 2X because of the significant costs with respect to their feet on street model and branch-led models. And that is where a financial technology company, which is not just tech-enabled, but rather tech-driven from the start to the end of the customer life cycle, is able to deliver capital and other financial services at a cheaper cost to the end customer in a more customized fashion. We've had a very, very interesting COVID and pandemic scenario here in the past 4 months. We were blessed enough to be able to raise a round of funding as well in the middle of this. We are NABARD's first equity investment ever, and that helps us access capital at a significantly lower rate and access to FPOs at an unprecedented rate as well, where we are able to facilitate financing at cheaper costs, but also in a secure manner to the right opportunities across the country. In addition to that, we have Arkham Ventures, who's an investor in us, Better, Bloom, Astar, Prophetic, and various other HNIs like Mr. Mariwala, etc. as well, who are legacy players in the agri domain. Our partners on the lender side are banks like Rabobank, NBFCs and other scheduled banks in the country, and we work with various institutions like the ones on your screen to be able to help them get their grants or their capital out there in the market in terms of either advisory or for the agripreneur upskilling and things like that. We have 3 financial products that we work with, the middle value chain player. So being a B2B2C, we access the customer, which in our case, or with relevance to this particular conversation, is the farmer. Right? So we work with either the seller or the buyer in the agri, dairy, or poultry value chain. On the seller side, we work with agri input retailers and agri equipment retailers or dealers, where we provide equipment financing and input financing. We've made equipment financing in a way in the states that we operate, which is approximately 9 states today, as easy as getting financing for your Xiaomi cell phone or getting financing for a car, right? Where the farmer just needs to walk into the dealer location. Our loan origination system is sitting at the dealer location. The dealer is fully trained to be able to onboard that particular farmer onto our platform. We underwrite the particular farmer within about 30 minutes to 1 hour itself. Maybe we may have to ask them to request for some other documents as well. And once we have the full set of documents, we are able to provide capital to that farmer within 72 hours so that they can access that particular equipment and start with their growing activity or harvesting activity. On the other hand, we work with agri input retailers as well, who are providing inputs on credit previous to Jai Kisan to farmers, but that is what was kind of limiting their fundamental growth as well. Because at the end of the day, a retailer only has a limited amount of money that they can lend out in form of agri inputs, right? Because they do not themselves have access to an unlimited amount or infinite amount of working capital. And that is where we are able to partner with them and provide financing for their farmer borrowers for the inputs that they fundamentally sell to them. And then we work with large institutional buyers. Again, these are of various levels. We work with FPOs, we work with rural SMEs, we work with agtechs, and we work with corporates as well, where we enable these entities to be able to pay on the spot to their particular supplier partner or farmer partner. Before Jai Kisan came in, most of these entities were taking about 7 days, 15 days, in some cases 30, 45 days as well to make good on their payment to their farmer or their supplier partner, fundamentally because that is how the value chain worked and the working capital or liquidity was unlocked when the produce was actually sold to the eventual customer, which fundamentally is you and me in cities and in urban demand centers. Yeah? So this is how we are able to provide their credit requirement across the board in pre-harvest with respect to equipment financing and input financing, and in post-harvest with respect to invoice financing, thereby ensuring that they have the capex or the asset they need to be able to get into their growing activity, the raw materials or the inputs that they require to be able to kickstart their production cycle, and then unlocking liquidity the day they actually end up delivering the produce to the off-taker rather than having to wait and delay their further crop cycle as well. And that is where we see farmers now being able to get access to capital at a much cheaper rate and further increase their bottom line net profit because they're able to do more crop cycles in the year, at the same time are able to unlock liquidity when most important, which is either while purchasing inputs at the start of the crop cycle or at the end of the crop cycle where they are actually selling their produce to the off-takers. With respect to equipment financing, and Anjali, thank you for that question there, right? So I'll actually answer it right now. With respect to equipment financing, we do not finance the tractor, actually. We believe that the tractor is extremely overfunded in India, and a tractor in the end of the day only propels, right? It doesn't do much other than that. So what we fundamentally finance here at Jai Kisan is tractor-driven implements, drip irrigation, motor pumps, shade nets, poly houses, dairy equipment, limited poultry equipment as well, and things like that. So we do everything but the tractor. We are today in about 9 states and union territories. We have 450 channel partners. These are across dealer partners, FPOs, corporates, etc. And we have 9,000 plus active borrowers at the moment. Our average ticket size is about 1.5 lakh rupees per customer. And our tenures range from anywhere from 1 month all the way up to 3 years as well. We disburse anywhere between 15 and 20 crores on a month-on-month basis. And this has been for the past about 8 months when we kicked off our full-fledged model of working directly with integration with banks and facilitating their financing further. By the end of the year, we hope to be at scale this up to about 25 to 30 crores of disbursements on a month-on-month basis as well, and reach more states and significantly more number of borrowers to be able to create widespread impact. On the technology side, we have 3 fundamental pods, which we call here internally. One is the loan origination system, which is used to be able to underwrite and onboard the customer, which is the farmer. The loan management system, which our lender partners use to be able to get visibility on the loans that they actually fund and provide debt towards. And third is enterprise solutions for our value chain partners to be able to digitize their transactions in a more sophisticated and seamless manner, and also to be able to relay that particular data into our underwriting system to further understand the customer, but also the type of transaction that we are fundamentally funding. Right? So we operate as a technology VC or a fintech partner of banks, and we are a fully digital and compliant financial technology interface for scheduled commercial banks in the country as well. Through the platform, our buyer partners also avail of financing in a seamless manner at their location. So now we are slowly also kind of launching financial products, not just for the end customer, which is the farmer, but also for our mid-value chain players. It can be the seller or it can be the FPO, which is procuring back from them. So I understand that I'm kind of over time here, and I will stop here and happy to kind of jump into questions at the later stage of this call as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Thank you, Arjun. Thank you so much for detailing the Jai Kisan's model as well as how it is helping farmers, and of course B2B2C model, what you have just explained. So now we will take the questions. So very interesting questions have been asked by participants. So I will start with Cropin because that's the first presentation we have had. So the Kunal, this is for you. The first question is about what is the scope of, I think, genetically modified crops at this time, and why most of the farmers are against this? I think this is a very generic question, but I don't know why the participant choose to ask Kunal. If you can just address that, that would be helpful.
Whether, I mean, there are mixed response to that. Like there are two segments in that, right? One is who's really able to implement those solutions, and mostly if you see in developed economies, right, most of these crops are GMO crops, which means you can increase per acre production using those crops. The second is around sustainability, like and as well as the cost of production, because if you go for these type of newer modified crops, you'll have to spray more, you'll have to take care of the crops in much more detailed manner. When things goes wrong, then there is this big challenge, right? Obviously on the because this is GMO crop, on nature it has a certain impact, because to the acre of land that you're having, you were actually using a certain way of production, but now you are accelerating that pace, which means it's like racing the car to achieve a faster goal. So I think there are two clubs of that. Farmers, there are club of farmers which really see value in that. There are people who see more from the environment sustainability perspective. So right or wrong, I think I will not be the right person to suggest, but I see both sides having their fair points.
True. Yes. So the next question again to you, Kunal, is that you mentioned that you have reached around 2.1 million farmers. How active are the farmers on the platform? Do you find more activity when you work through field teams or intermediaries?
So when we are talking about this 2.1 million farmers, these are all our active farmers. This fluctuates between the cropping seasons. Obviously, when you go to the Kharif season, you have this numbers reaching to almost 90% being active. Some of the and during the Rabi season, you have around 50-60% of that activity happening those crops. But since this is a global database, 70% of that is there in India for us. So that's the trend that majorly fluctuates our numbers. But overall, if you see that on an activity perspective, around 60% of the farmers on our platform are active throughout the season, throughout the year. More from who drives this activity. So the digitization happens through the extension workers, and they are very critical element mostly in smallholder farming countries across Southeast Asia and Africa, because they help farmers to adopt these new practices, capture the data, and then provide these services to them. So yes, the reliance is there on the extension team through which the data is getting captured and services are being delivered.
Okay. So now I will take the question to Shyam. So Shyam, the question for you is that it seems your model aims to bypass the middleman in markets which are underserved. How do you deal with the last mile distribution of inputs? Are middlemen not necessary to fulfill this service?
So see, there are middlemen who are part of the value chain, who are they add value, and there are layers who do not add any value, right? At the heart, we are taking off those layers, right? Having said that, let me just take this opportunity to talk about the Dehat micro entrepreneur. See, Dehat micro entrepreneurs are generally community-based person having some background in agriculture, right? So they might be erstwhile agri input retailer, or they might be someone who had done agri output aggregation or worked in agri extension at the community level, right? So we partner with these kind of individuals. We also see that what kind of background do they have, what kind of reputation do they have in the society, how well placed they are, right? And by partnering with them, we ensure that within that network we have enough connect with partners, right? That last mile connect ensures that there is no conflict, there is we are aligned with ground level reality, right? And which is where we do not necessarily compete with middlemen. We kind of partner with those who are associated at the farmers level, right? So you rightly said, at the agri input for distribution of agri input, we have these Dehat centers other than distribute agri input to farmers. And similarly, the same Dehat center, they aggregate material from farmers and output agri produce, and then we take charge of the material, then we supply to institutional buyers. I hope that answers the question.
One more question which is relevant to it and also about how it's translating in terms of value for farmers and micro entrepreneurs together in terms of your model.
Sure. So continuing with the micro entrepreneurs, a micro entrepreneur generally, if you visualize an agri-input retailer, generally these agri-input retailers have access to only those input products for which they have the network to a distributor or a wholesaler. So to take that, they will have to go to 10, 15 different distributors and wholesalers, or a company sales executive come to their doorstep to deliver the material. When they partner with us, from the very first day itself, they have access to more than 3,000 input SKU products at one time. Not just that, right? We also ensure that on a hub and spoke model, they do not have to maintain too much of inventory, right? Because we ensure that within 48 hours of their order, inventory reaches to their doorstep, right? So they do not have to maintain many SKUs, long inventories of many SKUs, and we ensure that efficient working capital is managed. We also ensure that they do not have to spend their time and energy and money on networking with farmers, right? Due to our advisory connect, due to our direct connect with farmers come to their doorstep, right? We ensure that their coverage area, and also see, agri, everywhere there is a seasonality in agri, right? But when they connect with us, there always an option for them to work year round. If they are just doing input previously, they can do output with us. They can do cattle feed. They can do multiple other things. They can do credit, insurance, right? So year round, a monthly income is assured to them, right? So that's the these are the benefits for which they are micro entrepreneurs. They remain attached to us. To farmers, so when that ecosystem gets strengthened, the benefit then goes to farmer, right? So to farmers also, they always have access to all the input products as they are desired by them. And then coupled with the advisory that we send, we ensure that farmers get best quality inputs, what is relevant for them, right? They get access to information, best quality information, and marketing. And we already talked about how farmers in this whole operation, farmers remain the focal point, right? And when we strengthen the last mile delivery of products and services to them, the ultimate beneficiaries remain farmers. Yeah.
Thanks, Shyam. So we'll now move to Ranjit. I'll of course come back to speakers again. So Ranjit, the first question for you is about that. How can we get the cattle monitoring device at an affordable rate? So, I mean, if you can throw some light on about this cattle monitoring device, and participants want to know about it, if you can just explain, that would be helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you just can write to us. So we do the basic assessment of the location. We do work in clusters across India. There are certain prerequisites that it needs to satisfy, more in terms of what other interventions that do we need to do before we get to the live cattle monitoring. Right, there would be some basic nutrition issues with the animals. There'd be basic extension that is needed, and we do have a strong extension team. So once the basic prerequisites are in place, the next step is to do live monitoring. Right, the first basic step is to ensure that the one-on-one with respect to the animal management is in place. It is indeed a smallholder farm. It's 2 to 3 animals, but even within the 2 to 3 animals, if you plan to detect the heat or the estrus in the animals, the animal needs to come to heat in the first place, right? So basic nutrition needs to kick in. So it's sort of a process. It's just not a quick fix where you put the variable and you're ready to go, right? I mean, that normally works in a big farm, and a big farm is not our focus. Our focus is on a smallholder farm. So I do, if people are interested in deploying it, we can help you enable that in your place. But as I said, it's there are a bunch of prerequisites that would sort of come in. Right? As I said, the primary function helps you service one. It helps in optimizing the breeding cycles, helps in optimizing the animal nutrition, helps in optimizing the health in terms of preventive health care. It helps the ecosystem players like the cattle nutrition players, the cattle pharmaceutical players, the fintech companies like Jkisan, the financing companies like Jkisan, as Arjun mentioned. Finally, those are the guys sitting with the check. Those are the guys who sign the check. And how do you give them confidence that we're able to underwrite risk better because we are monitoring the asset, right? How do you give other participating ecosystem players to do it? So it helps in a bunch of things. And other than also provide premium market linkages. Suppose someone wants to sell their milk as happy cows. How do you know the cow is happy, right? If you're not monitoring them, right? You can't see them smiling, but there's another indicator that you do, right? So it enables a whole bunch of things, right? So, happy to take it on. You can get the contacts from the organizer, drop a note, and we will assess if we can deploy it in your areas as well.
Okay. Thanks, Sanjay. So one more question is quickly is about this. What is the criticality of market linkages and how are you innovating in the market linkage front for farmers and other stakeholders to get the maximum value out of their contribution? So essentially about what is the criticality of market linkages for the stakeholders and how is it translating into a real value to those people?
Yeah. Actually, yeah. So if you ask me, that's sort of the single most important thing. How do you create premium market linkages, right? Do remember it's not the commodity market linkage. So the commodity market linkage problem has been solved in our country for a while, right? So our per capita consumption of milk is about 410 to 415 grams per capita, compared to where it was maybe 5-6 years ago. Less than half of it. We were below the WHO standards of 250 grams per capita. So the availability problem is solved. Now the problem is how do you solve for premium market linkages? What I mean by that is some of us here, if we are interested in getting access to antibiotic-free milk, we're want access to aflatoxin-free milk, want to get access to milk rich in omega-3 fatty acid, for which you need to actually control the animal nutrition, because what you feed the animal directly reflects in the characteristics of the milk. How do you ensure that you feel that you're drinking the milk from your grandmother's house when you were a kid, when you visit your hometown, right? So if you want to get that kind of a milk, for which all of us here might be willing to pay a premium, right? Then all the stakeholders in the value chain benefit, right? The benefit flows back to the farmer, wherein we can pay him premium prices for the milk rather than paying commodity prices. It enables the other ecosystem players to participate more rigorously, like be it cattle nutrition, cattle farmer providers, because now every ounce of the contribution go towards higher production and higher quality production that in turn enables a premium market linkage, right? So the idea is it sets the whole thing into a positive virtuous loop if we are able to enable through all the technologies along the chain, take these high-end, high-quality milk into the market, which people are willing to pay a premium for, so that milk is just not seen as something that's available you can have for your tea and coffee. Can you get people to have more Kanazwa grade cheese? Can you get people to have more paneer that actually melts in your mouth? Can you get people to actually very safely give milk to the 2-year-old at home, so that you don't really have to be worried about is there listeria in the milk? Is there somatic cell counts in the milk? What's going to happen if there is certain adulterants that are not supposed to be there, right? I'm not saying the milk today has all of them, but the fact that no one is talking about it doesn't mean it's absent, right? So the idea is to provide these in a very affirmative fashion rather than in a silent fashion as it is done today. So it's a very critical part of what we're attempting to do. I'm sure others also have the same problem.
Okay. Thanks, Sanjay. So now we'll go to Arjun. So a couple of questions, Arjun. One is a credit provided to farmers collateral based? What's the time frame within which they have to pay back, and how do you respond when repayment doesn't take place in some cases? So I think this is more from a very operational side, but of course, if you can throw some light, that would be really helpful.
Very interesting question, and especially the last part of it, right? Now, Ranjit mentioned a very important thing here, right? At the end of the day, it is the value chain player who understands their farmer the best. It can be a dairy farmer, it can be an agri farmer, whatever the case may be. It's very hard for a financing company to understand, the way you explained it, as a cow happy, right? We need to rely on value chain players, much like Stella Apps, to be able to get that data from them, because they are the ones closest to the customer, and it's their customer at the end of the day. We do not do collateral-based loans. as a matter of fact, right? Why? Because in India, a large part of the farmers are landless, and hence our equipment loans are backed by the equipment itself. Our input loans are backed, or rather, collateralized by some format or the other by the value chain player, not by the farmer. And the invoice financing loans largely don't need backing because the inventory fundamentally or the produce has moved from the books of the farmer to the buyer already. That's for number one. Number two, what is the tenure period? So as I mentioned, the tenure period is anywhere from 1 month all the way up to 3 years, depending on the type of product that is financed and also the type of crop cycle that the particular farmer is working on. So in the case if it's poultry, for a day-old chicken to kind of become a full-bred chicken is anywhere between 45 to 60 days. In the term of dairy, we do much shorter loans as well. And in agri is where those loans kind of get extended out over a period of a crop cycle or maybe multiple crop cycles if the loan amount is relatively large. How do you respond when repayment doesn't take place? Interesting question. We respond the way our lenders need us to, right? So at the end of the day, it is the lender's loan that is going out to the farmer. There's a very, very clear understanding that the farmer needs to repay this particular money given that they will be making XYZ amount of proceeds using this particular asset, and hence the securities are invoked at that particular time and whatever those securities fundamentally may be. With respect to the next question, any plan to work with landless population? Actually, just over 30% of our farmers are landless farmers. We very much appreciate landless farmers and the entrepreneur's zeal that they do contain. And what we've seen in at least our small little data set compared to various banks, etc., is that landless farmers perform extremely well because they're more hardworking and more financially diligent/disciplined, because 95% of them are NTC customers, which is new to credit customers. And since we are the first ones who are believing in them and providing that credit to them, they go out of their way to ensure that they repay. And when they do that, farmers like this are able to actually get a very solid credit bureau score, using which they can go access other financial services either through Jai Kisan or through a financial institution directly as well. And that is the impact we are able to create. Do we help them acquire small land holding with the help of a credit facility? No, we do not. We do not do lending for buying land fundamentally. We do lending only for income generating purposes, which are based on transactions around the agri, dairy, and poultry value chains overall.
Thanks, Arjun. So now there are a couple of questions. Of course, there are a good number of questions which are lined up, but due to time constraint, so I would like to ask two questions which are common for all the 4 panel members, and I request you to be crisp and specific. So one is that how are you helping in terms of capacity building or extension support to farmers through your interventions? Why? Because most of the participants also express that capacity building is one of the key constraints at a farmer level to use or to leverage the digital technologies. So over to all the panel members one by one, if you can just address that, then it will be helpful.
So maybe if I go first, for us, and that's the right question, that whether digital technologies can be really leveraged in the way possible with the farmers. So mostly when we have these programs, we do the capacity building, training, development of the end farmers through the extension workers or the VRPs or the LRPs through the particular program itself. They run the training around with these farmers. Plus, we also have our agronomists and technical consultants that go initially in the first phase of the program and help them in terms of the training and digitization activities. Besides that, there are regular quarterly assessments of how digital technology is being used, because actually you can monitor the usage of these platforms, and once the usage of the platform drops, that's the time when we re-engage with them to understand what is the challenge in terms of adoption. So digital helps us in some way, and physical with trained people also helps a lot in ways possible.
Sure, great. And this is very relevant.
Please.
Yes. So see, I already discussed about how we are reaching to farmers digitally for all kind of advisory support. There are two other ways that I would like to describe. One is in-person support. So at the cluster of center level, we have an extension team which conducts in-person farmer trainings and on-field demonstration. Definitely during these COVID times, the in-person farmer trainings have been stopped, but on-field demonstrations are on. But more than that, we also work with farmer producer organizations for the capacity building of FPO leaders as well as for farmers, right? So this entire journey where first we train FPO leaders on general FPO management, business planning, how best to plan for which agri input products or agri output products should be used. And then we further trickle it down to at farmers level where we train their farmers as well. And definitely we provide end-to-end marketing. So I think capacity building at an aggregated level is something that is coming from there, where we have now partnered with many FPOs in Bihar, in Jharkhand, and in Orissa, where we are training, where we are providing this capacity building support to farmers and FPO.
Yeah, a couple of points on the topic. One, luckily in the milk scenario, the farmers do come to the milk collection centers, twice a day. So we are trying to drive home the concept wherein it's a case of the farmers coming to the extension rather than the extension going to the farmer. Right, and in fact, some of the collection centers were as extension points. We don't even call them a collection center, it sort of gives it a very commodity trading view, right? But we believe that the milk commerce is the byproduct of an extension service done well. So to that extent, what we do is that we have a team of vets, paravets, farm intervention technician coaches who also go on a periodic basis to the various farms where we intervene, which contribute to the milk grid, right? And then it's in addition to this, the farmers do come to the extension points or the collection centers, twice a day, every single day. So as a combination, we do segment farmers into high touch, moderate, and intense farmers, right? So low touch farmers are guys who are just getting started. It's in a basic advisory mode. The moderate farmers are who warrant a little more intervention to put them up into the next orbit of dairypreneurship, right? And then you have intense farmers who've shown a lot of amenability to grow. They're very adherent to all the protocols. We spend more time with them. So as a combination of these techniques, we ensure that people are not lost out on want of extension. But it's a very important question. I'm not trivializing it, because no matter what tech you have, no matter what high-end stuff you do, we do things like on the farm side, facial recognition of animals to ensure that ID theft is not a problem, right? But you could do all of it, but at the end of the day, if to operationalize it on the ground, you need personnel who can guide people, bring them up to the next orbit. And we use a combination of techniques that I just mentioned to bring them up to the next orbit. So that's my 2P on the topic.
Right. John, if you can.
Sure. So here we do this slightly differently also, like Ranjit and team, where we leave the agri advisory, the dairy advisory, the poultry advisory more towards the value chain player, and we focus more on the financial advisory to give to not only the farmer, but also to the value chain player. Again, it can be the retailer or it can be the buyer, like an FPO or corporate or an ag tech company, etc. Right, and that is where we have two sets of individuals in the teams. Right, one are field officers and area managers who work with farmers and at the ground level, at the time of underwriting them, maybe going seeing their field, understanding their operations, and also understanding their overall financial landscape and what they are planning for the future as a farmer entrepreneur. At the same time, give some sort of insights around financial discipline and how to kind of map that as well. Because one of the most important things that we need to separate it from is that this is not, it's not a NGO, right? It's not an NGO kind of capital that's coming to you. It is something that is making you financially disciplined and financially enabled in the future to be able to access financial services directly from a bank, from a banking branch, and things like that. And on the other hand, we have account managers who work very closely with our seller partners or buyer partners in helping them streamline their financial condition and also be able to unlock working capital wherever fundamentally possible. In addition to that, we have a customer experience team that's based here in Bombay who does telecalling with these farmers on regular intervals to understand how their operations are shaping up and whether the revenue that they were expecting to generate in that particular season or in that particular month or in that particular week is something that has actually happened, and if it is not, why not? That also kind of enables them to be financially fundamentally disciplined and going towards more of a progressive level.
Thank you so much. So one last question, and again we are really running short of time. The last question is how your products or services helped the farmers and the ecosystem in this pandemic times, because now this has thrown some unexpected challenges and crises. So how your products have helped these farmers and ecosystem players? If you can just throw some light, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so for us, I think this has been the right time for organizations to adopt digital because farmers in far-flung areas, different districts, different parts of the state, they are all working together for the cause of the organization as well as their own cause, right? So helping them to get access to services like, be it seeds at the doorstep delivery, be it in terms of getting the right set of advisories, how to grow that particular crop, giving them information about pests and disease that might come. So earlier, these interventions were all being passed on to them through certain intermediaries in between. But having the COVID, the physical movement have reduced, digital has become the new norm, and people are more relying on that. So we have seen it's more very exponential growth in terms of adoption of digital services during these times. And from an impact perspective, the farmers are also showing that the services that they are consuming is really creating much more value because there are no further information that they're getting other than digital during these times.
Right, and I agree with Kunal. And during these times, I think the adoption of digital tools have really taken off. Right, I was describing about how many Dehat micro entrepreneurs are getting onboarded using completely digital means, right? Which had been a first, and we had actually started this during the COVID times only, and seen great response to the same. We have also seen, interestingly, great surge in terms of how farmers are connecting with us digitally, right? On all our forums, there is a good surge of all these farmer interactions, right? And I think the partly that had happened because the areas that we operate are primarily those areas where there has been a lot of reverse migration that had taken place. And we believe that, a lot of, so digitization has been actually accelerated in those areas. And that had impacted the way that agri had been, the way that farmers were doing agri transactions. We do not foresee that ultimately this will, in the night, within like very short period of time, it will change dramatically, but there will be a very large impact. And what that had done us for models like us who are in agri-tech model and we are part of where we have combined physical and digital kind of a digital model, it had made us more efficient and it had made our offerings more relevant to farmers, right? So they can directly reach out to us. And so the time and effort to reach out to them or farmers reaching out to us had been short.
I mean, I'd echo the same sentiment. In the interest of time, since we're well past the time, I would just say that it's the digitization requirement has gone up, and the COVID has acted like a significant catalyst for that. People are demanding more visibility into the supply chain. Since we have a hardware component involved, people are more amenable to doing remote support, remote monitoring, remote configurations. So yes, it's actually like a significant catalyst. I think it's a sort of a no-brainer that every supply chain would probably see the same upside and catalytic value from COVID in pushing forth the digitization journey.
Absolutely, and Ranjan and everyone else, right, completely echo that. We've seen our value chain players completely uptake in their transactions as well throughout the period, except when there was a very, very stringent lockdown in their particular micro geographies. What we've seen, to echo everyone's views, there's a significant uptake in digitization and acceptance to digitize, not just by the farmer, but also the value chain player. And in addition to that, what advantage did farmers see working with us, or what advantage did the value chain players see working with us, was fundamentally that in the month of April, that even to the biggest anchors, no money was dispersed, and we still continue to disperse money. Right? So in April, May, and June, when other lenders were taking a significant backstop or backstep, because moratorium was also declared, which is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of an event in the financial sector in a particular country, that is when we got bullish on our growers, because at the end of the day, I'm sure you guys didn't buy any cell phones or TVs or cars in the month of April, but I'm sure all of us bought food. Right? And that is where the essential nature of this particular value chain comes out as well. And funding for it, can feel bullish even in times like that. So I think I'll stop there, Suman, since we are probably way over time, and very much appreciate this.
Okay. So thank you so much. The insights and the candid experiences and sharing of the panel members has been really, really useful for the participants, I believe. And second thing is about, sorry, my sincere apologies to all the participants. I'm not able to take all the questions what you have asked. However, we try to take it to the panelists and try to revert to you in best possible manner. Okay. So I once again thank all the panel members as well as participants for making this entire discussion a very, very useful one and insightful one.